Hey, what's going on, good people? It's your boy James Harris, of course, Mental Heal. Listen, I appreciate all the support over the years, whether it was for my book, man, Just Express Yourself, which is an interactive planning guide for boys and men to better express themselves. So salute to those parents who got it for their young sons. Praises to those partners and couples who got it for the men in their life. Of course, to the schools, the administrative, and everybody else who ordering the book by the dozens. I definitely appreciate that. And also salute to everybody who supported me on Cheesy Date Board Games, which is a good game for adults and couples, your game night, your date night. So many interactive ideas come from it. I definitely love the responses that it's garnering. But now I'm asking for your support again on this YouTube journey. I'm back. I took a little break because I had so much going on, but be a little bit more consistent with it. I got a couple of interviews lined up with prominent people and people doing phenomenal things within the community or within this mental health space or even different authors and things like that. So bear with me. Appreciate your support. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And the guest that I got coming up now is.
My name is Tiq Milan. I live in Los Angeles by way of New York City. I'm an advocate, a writer, a leadership and development coach, a father. Just, all around good guy, I guess.
Yeah, so that was a heck of a title. What do you mean by advocacy coach? What's that in reference to?
Well, I'm a leadership coach, and I also do a lot of advocacy work. So, over the course of my career, I've worked as an activist and an advocate, particularly around the LGBT issues and LGBT issues that intersect with the Black community. So, basically, what's going on with Black queer people. So, I've been in that space a lot as, I'm transgender, I'm a trans man. So, as a model of possibility, as a spokesperson for different organizations, as an organizer with different organizations, and I'm a keynote speaker. So, I travel all around the world telling people my story of transition, and talking about ways in which we could be an allyship with people who are on in the LGBT community, particularly with their racialized lens of what this means for Black people. And then on the leadership side, my corporate work, I'm a leadership and development coach. So I go into different companies and I teach managers and executives how to be better bosses, how to build systems of equity and inclusion, and how to build in behaviors of equity and inclusion in their daily interactions with the people that they manage.
No, and that's a lot, man, because when you just mention those few words, equity and inclusion, knowing
Yeah.
the political climate that we're in now, as far as jobs and or the current administration,
Yeah.
how do you feel now that your impact in your work has highlighted different things within that?
Man, first off, it's terrible. Like my work has took a hit, like for real. It's so there's so many corporations and organizations who are afraid to bring in people like me to have these conversations, who are cutting their departments and their commitment to diversity and inclusion. So what I've found is I'll have to be a little bit smarter about it. So kind of not using that language, but still teaching the same thing, still pushing forward leadership that looks like inclusion. Sometimes I call it allyship. Sometimes I call it impact. So that's how it's impacting me personally. I think on a macro level, what it's looking like for the queer community, particularly for trans people, a lot of us are scared. I'm thinking about where in the world I can go that's not the United States, where I'm not public enemy number one. I have a lot of my colleagues who are working in leadership, in movement spaces are also thinking about how do we keep ourselves safe? How do we preserve our like literal our personal selves? And at the same time, how do we still show up for a community? So it's a precarious situation to be in. And I think that also the other part of it is that what we also know, a lot of us also know, is that this is kind of a bait and switch. They're making trans people the pariah and the boogeyman so that you're not actually looking at what the problem is. And my good girlfriend Laverne Cox said it the best. She said, "Y'all are focusing on the wrong 1% here. It's not trans people's fault. That you know what I'm saying? It's not our fault that eggs are through the roof. It's not our fault that people are coming out of college and not being able to work and are having full-time jobs and living in their cars. It's not trans people's fault that we're having this issue with the young men in this incel culture. It is not our fault what's happening in Gaza. None of these things are because of trans people, but they're telling you to focus on us so that you're not focusing on the other experiences around this world that are actually having a personal impact on your livelihood. But it ain't us."
It ain't nice. That's funny. I just seen a couple of days ago the Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. She did a back and forth, a Trump versus
Trump or trans?
yeah. So
Smart
that
girl.
what is pretty much what Laverne highlighted also.
Yeah.
So just to dive back a little bit, like um when you allyship is a strong word. I consider myself an ally
Yeah.
for pretty much
Mhm.
everybody, specifically in this case the community, LGBTQ plus. So I've done seminars, I've done partnerships, I've hosted a lot of different things because I think it's important for me as a heterosexual male to speak out and show that support and everything. So if you could, all right, we still got you, just making
Yeah,
sure.
I'm here.
If you could just talk about, so when I was soliciting questions for this interview, the first one of the first two questions I got is like from this woman, like, who the hell wants to be a man? And then who the hell would want to be a black man? Like y'all deal with so much. Why would anybody want to do that? So help them and me understand, like, why would you want to be a black
Yeah.
man of all things?
Yeah. That's a good question. It's not necessarily it's not necessarily a situation of wanting to be. This is just who I am, you know. And this is the thing. And I think this is just to take it a little deeper, right? When people ask, well, why would you want to be a man? What that says to me is that there may be a lack of understanding that gender is a spectrum, right? It's not just pink, it's not just blue. There are trans people and people in within the spectrum of masculinity and femininity and different gender identities. And this has happened, and this is the truth of the world. Prior to colonization, there were all kinds of trans folks and non-binary folks on the spectrum. There were different genders. So you have like the Bishu of Indonesia, they recognize five different genders. There's, the ancient practice of Yoruba has a deity, Osumade, who is spends half the year male, half the year female. Indigenous people understood that there were people of different genders. Indian people, understood. The South Asian people understood that there were various genders and not just here. So I'm saying all that to say, my gender is just my gender, and it's not about a wanting, I just am, right? And so I've had to make this transition in order to make sure that I have like these these male characteristics and these other like secondary male characteristics so I can live in the world as I see myself. So it's not necessarily a want, it's just now I have the opportunity and the privilege to do the things I need to do to be my most authentic self. So it's not about being a want, I just am. But with that being comes a responsibility. And I think that though that's the more important question. Like now that I am a man, is it about am I a good man or am I good at being a man? And those are the questions that I have to ask myself as I cultivate my masculinity in this world.
So
So go ahead, go ahead.
no, I ain't mean to cut you off. I don't think she had malice with her question. Her question was
I don't think so either.
of sarcasm and satire. Like, who in the hell want to be a man? Like, y'all trash. You know what I mean? It was more so
Terrible.
that
Terrible.
like, like who would want to be a man? So,
Yeah,
but your phrase and your education and what you just, I like, I'm sure what you just mentioned will educate a lot of people because some people do think it's as black and white as that. Like, like it's a feeling or it's, whatever the case is. So what you just broke down was definitely a vital part in the education piece of it because people do have different feelings. And not only that, you just gave different parts of the world. Of course, here, Western society and philosophy views is boy, girl, black, white, blue, pink, masculine, feminine. That's it. It's
yeah,
not
that's
a
it.
spectrum.
Right. Yeah, and
So,
it's a both and. It's like yes, there's pink and blue and masculine, feminine, and there's so much more. And there's a lot of history of people. If people just want to be intentional, there's so much history on the variety and variance of gender and how it looks in the world for thousands of years, thousands of years.
So how did you know transitioning was one of those things that you wanted to do or should do? Because I'm sure at some point, like I'm 39, so when I was growing up, it was more so of at most you probably see somebody with a wig on, maybe makeup, but not
Right.
for transition. Like
Right.
it's no denying the fact, like what I mean, your beard
Right.
is proper than mine. So like, how did you know full on? I'm in it.
Yeah, yeah. But here's the thing that, like you said, like back then, because and I'm a little older, than you, I'm 45. So we grew up around the same time, right? So yeah, I didn't know that word transgender didn't even exist growing up. We knew
Yeah.
drag queens, you know what I'm saying? But there were definitely trans people who existed then we just didn't know about, right? So I'll tell you straight, this is the thing. So I think a lot of people think that. transgender people understand themselves to be trans as children, right? I didn't transition until I was in my 20s. But when I was 7 years old, I'm tell you a quick story. I was 7 years old, right? And my mother bought me this strawberry shortcake bicycle. It's a girl bike. It's a pink bike and the banana seat and the tassels and the whole nine, right? And I remember looking at that bike, and I didn't know that I was transgender, but I knew I wasn't riding that bike. I said, I ain't riding this bike. No, ain't no way I'm about to get on this pink bike. I ain't doing it. Ain't doing it. So I called my dad, and I'm like, Daddy, Mom got me the wrong bike. She got me the wrong bicycle. So he took the girl bike back and he got me a boy bike. And I was happy. And from then on, they only got me boy bicycles, right? So I'm saying at that time, I didn't know that I was trans, but I knew that I was different. And my parents understood that I was different. They understood I like to do what the boys did, and I was never chastised for it. I was never tried, no one tried to change me. They just nurtured the person that I was. So it wasn't until I was in my 20s and I'm full into my gay life and a very masculine presenting person at that time. And I was feeling a deep incongruence kind of like in my spirit. Like I was just like something distinct. I described it as like having a pebble in my shoe. That's what it felt like. You know what I'm saying? It's like they did like life didn't feel right. And I was working at this bar, and this white dude came in and he threw some flyers on the bar, and I looked at the flyer and it was for his top surgery, and this was the first time I had ever met a trans man. So I was like, "Oh shit, you're trans." Oh, I had no idea, and I had a conversation with him, and that was like when the light went off. That's when I knew that was the next step for me. So it really took me. So it took having a nurturing like upbringing of just being allowed to be myself, and then being able to see this model of possibility, so that I could continue on with my life. You're muted. You're muted.
I'm glad your parents and the atmosphere you were in were able to nurture that. That's a phenomenal thing. I
Yeah.
interviewed one of my friends, Zakia. She owns a foundation called Nason's Foundation here in Richmond, but it's a international. It may be even it's a national organization, but it may even be international. And she speaks of a lot of the trans people that she encountered who don't have that support and didn't have the ability to have solace within their families. So people tend to run away. She talked about the surgeries and how people used to have like different pump parties and hotels and stuff like that because it wasn't as open as it is now.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's probably our age or a bit older, so she experienced a lot. So she speak of
Yeah.
many of those things, and I interviewed her a couple years ago. But her organization, helps people with testing, help people
Yeah.
with
Great.
counseling, help people with if they want to fully transition and so many other factors. So I'm glad you and her and so many other people now have those family members who give that support and
Oh,
allow people to be themselves. Because it used to just be, all right, you to wherever you want to do that, get on out of here. You know,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
those
Yeah.
used to be horror stories of it.
Yeah, yeah, it's super important. That family support and that love is paramount to all of our survival, really. Yeah.
Awesome. And you also mentioned when you gave your introduction that you're a father. So how did you navigate that part of being, and we connect on social media. So I see the awesome pictures you are
Yeah.
as a father. So how does
Yeah.
that transition or play into where you are now with them? Like how'd you educate them or how'd you teach them or
Mm.
do they even know about your past?
Yeah. So that's a good question. So my story with my daughter is, it's kind of a cautionary tale, right? So I do have a child. She's 7 years old. I had with my ex-wife. However, I really don't have a strong relationship with my daughter anymore because my ex-wife decided that I was an abomination. I was trans, and she like found Jesus and just kind of just stole my daughter away. I know she lives you're in Richmond. She's in the DC area, but I really don't have a relationship with my daughter, unfortunately. But when I did have a relationship with her, this has been over the last couple of years. My daughter's 7 now, and I think growing up, and I know lots of other trans fathers, and we talk about this. How do you navigate this space with your child? I always wanted it to be where I never had to come out to her. You just understand that daddy is transgender, and you also know that your godmama, Angelica, is transgender, and you know that this person is non-binary. You just understand that there's a diversity of humans in life. So there's never have to be a place where you have to come out. So that's the idea that I've always wanted to live by when it came to raising my child. And for the trans fathers, I know that's how they do it too. It's just the truth of life. So it doesn't ever have to feel like you have to come out to them.
So, for the people that you encounter, whether they are therapists stuck in their ways or religion people who just believe God only had two genders or whatever the case is, for those people who, like, let's just say, preference it as that's just a phase or is it gender dysphoria, what would you say to those people?
Yeah. Well, first, when it comes to the religious part, I'm saved and sanctified. I go to church every Sunday. I preach in my church, and I think me being trans has brought me closer to God. I understand God better as his son. I believe that the only thing that God wants for us is for us to be our best and most authentic self and to live and to be guided by kindness and justice. And the two greatest commandments that God has given us is to love your neighbor, is to love God with your whole heart and your whole soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Right? And if I'm doing those two things, then all we can do is be inclusive and kind and just to one another. So that's the God that I serve. So when people come to me with that, you got to miss me because I'm blessed and highly, highly favored in this trans body, in this experience. So that's what I have to say to that. When it comes to this idea of dysphoria, I don't like to, it pathologizes trans people. It turns us into a diagnosis, right? It's not dysphoric if we understand that gender is bigger, is not a binary system. And if we just think about it, we think about binary systems in scientifically, in physics, they don't necessarily always work. Fluidity is kind of what works, within our world. So there is fluidity within our systems of gender, and when we understand that, then we understand that people aren't a diagnosis. So that's what I have to say to that. And then the third part of that is that if people would start to understand, if you start to treat trans people with some love and some respect and some kindness, when you allow our experiences to complicate and actually expand your own experience, then we won't start to see these statistics where you have so many trans people who are trying to commit suicide, have suicidal ideation. You won't have so many trans people who are suffering from mental illness because you can go crazy from a broken heart and from abandonment. And I've seen it with my own eyes, with the young LGBT and trans kids that I was working with, the children that I work with who were the most broken, who were the most violent, who were the most unpredictable, were the ones who have been abandoned and who were not loved. You know what I'm saying? So I think if we think of it, reframe our thought process around it a little bit more, people will have a better understanding of our humanity and how we coalesce and how we align.
I got you. So those children that you work with, those families that you work with, what would be some of the advice that you would probably give to those parents or those guardians or the administrative people who encounter these students within that class or just any walks of life? What would be the advice that you give to these people?
I think for like family members, when you say you have someone in your family who was queer or trans or gay or whatever, if you love someone, there is no but after that. That is it. You love them, then you just love them. And you show up in their life. And the thing is, there's the little things that we can do that can have a big impact. If you're in a family with a queer person, if you are in school with queer kids, this one person, you can be the one that saves that child's life, that saves that person's life, that makes them feel that they're valuable, because that's sometimes that's all you need. When we come out, this is one thing I understood. When I came out as trans, I knew that I might lose everybody in this world that I thought loved me. Everybody in this world. I said, I might lose them all. And I didn't lose not one person. I didn't lose not one person. Thank God. Praise God, I didn't. Right? But it was that love that carried me through. Of my mother, God rest her soul, my father who's still here with me, so just being there and allowing and also I think another thing that's important if we're going to show love and kindness to different types of people, don't center ourselves in other people's experiences. Me being trans has nothing to do with your manhood. This trans woman, her woman has nothing to do with your womanhood. Nothing. It takes away nothing from you. And you take away nothing from me, but how can we expand each other? How can we have a better understanding? People have to want to be shaken up a little bit. People have to want to understand different truths. So once you get to that point, to be a little uncomfortable to expand your worldview, you'll be a better human being. You'll be a more divine person, is what I think.
I got you. So with that, so from a medical standpoint, the estrogen, the testosterone, and those things, depending on what your transition is from male to female, female to male, uh,
Um,
the sports aspect of it, because the last few months, years or whatever, it's been a big thing with
mm.
trans people competing or taking the spotlight from those people assigned gender at birth people. So what do you say about that?
Again, that's another bait and switch. It's a distraction. First, let's just talk about the numbers, okay? There are over 40,000 NCAA athletes in this country. There are 500 trans athletes. There are 500 trans NCAA athletes. Now, the stories that we keep hearing, this distortion is first, they're not talking about trans men. You don't want me in the women's room. You don't want me in the women's locker room. You don't want me on the women's team. I'm as strong as any cisgender man because of the testosterone I've been taking for 20 years. Right? Cis women, so we talk about from a medical standpoint, trans women who are on estrogen and progesterone, their muscle, like their muscle mass starts, it gets smaller. Their red blood cells out, it gets smaller because of the estrogen, right? So just physically, they're going to be more on par with cis women. Now, that's not saying that they don't win because they do win, but oftentimes that they lose. Like for instance, we had recently that fencing competition where there was a female, a cis woman who was a fencer, with the swords and whatnot, and she was to compete against a trans woman, and she took a knee in protest, and it was like this whole thing, right? But this is what people don't know. First, fencing is a co-ed sport. So men and women are fighting and fencing against each other all the time. That trans woman had lost a whole bunch. She'd lost a whole lot to men and to women. And the woman who had taken a knee had fenced against other men. But she was paid $5,000 to take that knee as an act of protest and to create this type of thing. Right? So that trans woman who was a fencer, she was just a bad athlete. Trans or not, girls, she was bad at what she did. Same thing that we saw this would happen in the Olympics with that woman who was a cis woman, who was a cis woman boxer.
And
Now,
but
no,
that,
she was
that was
trained.
misinformation all the way
Just
around.
misinformation. But the thing is, but that spoke volumes about what's happening. It's about controlling who and what a woman is. It's never about me as a trans man. It's never about trans men. It's really about controlling who women are. And it's just a drop in the bucket of what people need to be focusing on. Trans athletes are not an issue. And you're only worried about trans women because you don't want these little trans boys wrestling against girls. You don't want these trans men boxing women. I know professional trans men boxers. They fight men. You don't want that dude in the ring with, you know what I'm saying? So it's really about controlling women. And it's a slippery slope. They're starting with trans people, but they're going to start with the most marginal of first. And then it's going to expand out on making more restrictions to other people's humanity. So people need to be really careful about where they align themselves and what they allow themselves to think.
So this was very informative and educational. So I hope a lot of people do take away from it because a lot
Cool.
of people just assume like, well, you was born this way, so you still got the strength of, or you still got this part of, it's hard because of course the estrogen or the testosterone, I don't know if it will make you as equal, but I do know those dynamics will change within one's body.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so that part right there was educational, but of course somebody's gonna have a rebuttal to it and say
Yeah.
the way, whatever the case is. So I appreciate that dynamic aspect of it. So how can people stay in contact with you if they want the educational piece, if they want you to come speak
Yeah.
somewhere, or if they
Yeah.
need allyship or just an answer or a question, how can they get up with you and do that?
Folks can see all my work and we get contact. And if they want to get in contact with me, they can go to tiqmilan.com. That's the best way to see the things that I'm up to. I try to update it as much as I can. There's a contact sheet there. If they want me to come to their school or their companies or whatever, you can reach me there and we can have a conversation. You can find me on Instagram at the Mr. Milan. Is the best place to find me. And at LinkedIn, my name, Tiq Milan as well, just to see more of my professional background as well.
Gotcha. No, I definitely appreciate you taking the time out to not only share some knowledge, but just share your personal experiences and things that you encounter as a trans man. So,
Yeah.
anything else you want people to know? Like you got things coming up you want to discuss, or just let me know.
Yeah, well, I'm in Los Angeles right now, so folks on the West Coast, you can holler at me. I'll be in New York soon for a couple Pride gigs. I'm doing a lavender graduation at Brooklyn Manhattan Community College, and I have some other things coming up. But I think my parting thing to say here, just particularly thinking about men and our health and being good men in the world, is just allowing ourselves to be complicated, allowing ourselves to have a full experience and breadth of all of our emotions. To be fully human is to be fully emotional and also to be in control of those things, but also to be able to experience them, experience the sadness, the fear, the joy, experience things more than just lust, experience more than just anger, and also understand that we all have an experience of gender. You don't have to be a transgender person to intentionally say what kind of man I'm going to be in the world, what kind of woman am I going to be in the world, not what other people tell me, but what is tethered to my spirit, to my divine masculinity. So I think that's what I want to part with today. Is for the brothers that's listening, really dig into the divinity of your masculinity and your kindness and your strength. It makes you a better human for everybody that's around you.
Teak, my man, listen, I appreciate you just taking the time out to
Yeah.
drop that knowledge, man, because it's definitely important. And from a media standpoint, from a administration standpoint, we can see the war on specific people, regardless, just like you said, to distractions and all these
Yeah.
other signals opposed to what's actually going on. And a lot of times it's pretty much they don't want you to talk about that money aspect or those people
Right.
who really have the power to do things. So it's easier to turn them on men or trans or lower socioeconomic classes and so many other factors. So I'm glad you was able to take your time and good luck to everything that you got going on moving forward. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, man, I appreciate you. I'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.